Hi, and welcome to the Law Simplified. I'm Shaveen Bandaranaike. It has been a difficult year thus far for the world at large and law students in particular. We have had to prepare for and sit for our examinations or submit assignments under difficult circumstances. For some of you, this might be the very first instance you're sitting for a law exam, and for others, it might be the last occasion that you sit for an LLB examination. Whichever path you had taken to this point, and at whichever stage in the law degree that you might be, this is the new normal, and we've had to cope and adjust with the circumstances that have been presented to us. Having said that, at this stage of your law degree, a fundamental fact that you need to start thinking about is how exactly you would be progressing in terms of your academics and career. Irrespective of the degree that you're following, chances are, apart from the mandatory components or the modules that you'd have to take up, there are a number of elective modules that you will have to take up as well. Now, a common misconception among students is that when it comes to electives, it's either on the one hand the easiest goes, or on the other what's familiar will be what I select. So for instance, I've encountered students that tend to consider electives based on how simple they are to tackle and as a means to an end. On the other hand, I've also encountered students that tend to look at electives and the requirements of those modules or those subjects and then look at what they've already done and see what's familiar. Now, there are merits and demerits to both these aspects. However, what I would recommend is, in relation to selecting your electives, the subjects themselves, rather than looking backwards at what you've done in determining what you're going to do now, look at what's up ahead in terms of your academics and your career. In other words, the selection of your elective modules, how I would argue, should be what is most beneficial to you when you go on to, for example, further learning like a master's or an LLM, or the specialization you hope to get into when it comes to your career. For example, if you take an elective module such as commercial law, the aspects or the fundamental topics within commercial law tether very well to certain specializations in your LLM. For example, the commercial law module itself within the LLB would generally encompass topics such as the law of agency, sale of goods, and international trade. These fundamental topics will then get connected, for instance, in an LLM subject which focuses on commercial law, admiralty, for example, insurance law even. Thus, it does pay dividends somewhat when you select a particular elective module to go into the finer details of it and then try and find out your prospective LLM or even the career that you wish to go to, and determine if there is any linkages, so to speak, that exists. You can see this in terms of professions as well. So for instance, an elective module such as intellectual property would generally have topics like copyright law or patents, industrial design and trademarks. And in terms of a profession and specializations, later on in life, you might opt to go into entertainment law or franchising law or even sports law. And each individual subject would entail a particular profession that would harness the fundamentals that you'd learned from subjects, elective subjects at that, such as intellectual property. Right. This was to dispel a notion that an elective module in your LLB or your first degree in law is something that is fundamentally either to be swept aside and a means to an end, or simply a requirement based on something familiar in the past. Rather, I would argue that this is one opportunity that you have to differentiate yourself from the generic student or the generic LLB at that, and to recognize the opportunity that you have in selecting a module that you will treasure later on in your further learning as well as in your career. Having said that, make sure to have a look at the Law Simplified's online law school, now complete with pre-recorded fast track and masterclass courses, as well as workshops in which I fundamentally outline the answering of questions from A to Z, going through the breakdown of questions themselves and articulation of responses. But having said that, until the next time that we meet, have fun, stay safe, and as always, obey the law.